Hello, welcome to the debate on Sky News. I'm Martin Stanford. Here's our take on developments brought together from America, the UK and around the world.
One of the enemies that we'll be fighting at this conference is cynicism. Let's get to work.
The curse against climate control. Also, fast track to the future. We've done driverless cars and computer watches, but what's the next big thing in tech in 2016? We're talking to the man who knows. Dateline, Paris. 150 world leaders, from the President of the United States to the Prime Minister of Tuvalu, have gathered to control climate change. President Obama says the biggest obstacle is cynicism. In a moment, we're talking to Ben Schreiber, a senior environmental lobbyist. As usual, though, the Democrat commentator Jeffrey Robinson is standing by for us in New York, and we may be able to hook up with our regular contributor Armstrong Williams. He's actually travelling by plane to Las Vegas and may join us later in the recording. Jeffrey, first of all, our duty as citizens to control our use of carbon, do you think it is an imperative?
I think imperative is too light a word. I think it is absolutely critical, because if we blow it, we die. It's that simple. This is a life and death situation. Somewhere on the countdown clock, we're at 11:59, I suspect, and it's ticking down to doomsday. What I took away from this conference was the president's remark, and I'm paraphrasing, that we are the first generation to understand the problem, and we will be the last generation who will be able to do something about it. There is no choice. There is no alternative. We have to act, and we have to act seriously and fast.
Well, let's bring in Ben Schreiber. He's the Programme Director of Friends of the Earth for US, and he's actually at the conference in Paris. There was a lot of optimism when the week began, Ben. How are things now?
So I think that there's a lot of optimism that we're going to get a deal in Paris, but going in, we've always known that whatever happens here in Paris isn't going to be adequate to solving the climate crisis. This is one step in a trajectory. And so the real hope is that this moment propels us forward and continues to shine a real spotlight on how important and how imperative it is for us to act now.
One of the themes that seems to be emerging is that it's all very well the Western sophisticated economies, like America, like the UK, like France for that matter, preaching to the rest of the world who are still using coal power, don't use so much carbon. But we've had our industrial revolution. We've used carbon to get where we are today.
There's no question that what is shaping up here in Paris is very much a dialogue between the developed and the developing world, and the developed world telling the developing world that we need you to help solve this problem that we've created. And the developing world is saying, wait a minute, we expect you to finance and help us make the transition out of poverty in a sustainable way. And countries like the United States have refused to do their fair share. And they're refusing to give up the lifestyle and the fossil fuels, which still power our economy. One of the things that's going to be really interesting about this conference is that President Obama came here and he talked about climate change and he talked about the imperative. But at the same time, the State Department during this conference is going to be giving out oil leases and continuing to be drilling on public lands. So we continue in the United States to be producing fossil fuels and using them as a basis of our economy. And we need to transition as well.
And how difficult is that for any president, Jeffrey, do you think, let alone this president, in the twilight of his presidency?
Well, it's probably near impossible for this president, because he's facing a Republican Party that controls the Senate and the House who deny science. I mean, these are some wackos who will tell you with a straight face that man walked on the planet at the same time as dinosaurs. They deny science left, right, and center. Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, is one of them, and he has said categorically, we're not funding whatever President Obama comes back with. We're not funding it. I mean, this is dangerous to the point of absolute insanity and recklessness. We are playing with the life of the planet, and there will not be a second chance to get it right. If we get it wrong or don't act, That's it. Game over.
Now, I appreciate you're not a Paul Ryan fan, but if you were to put the question to him, but what about your grandchildren, which seems to be one of the things we all need to reflect on, what does he say? What about Paul Ryan's grandchildren?
He doesn't care about his grandchildren. He cares about the Koch brothers who are funding him so he can keep getting reelected and his wacko friends can keep getting reelected. It's the Koch brothers and a few billionaires who want to pollute the earth because that's where the profit comes from. So they are funding this whole anti-science thing that climate change doesn't exist. We had Chris Christie, who should know better because of Storm Sandy destroying half his state. He was on television this week saying, I just don't believe there's such a thing as climate change. Sure, the climate changes 4 times a year, but real climate change? And when he was faced with the question about rising sea levels, that had climate change not affected sea levels, had there been no such thing as climate change, probably half the damage that was done wouldn't have been done. But it was done because the sea levels have risen so much that the damage of this extraordinary storm, again, probably having something to do with climate change, ruined a huge portion of his state. They simply look at science and the facts and they deny it and say, I don't believe it. It's insanity.
Well, Ben Schreiber, this is such a polarising issue, isn't it, because of this complication over the science. Actually, even the scientists are not completely agreeing. I mean, Jeffrey alluded to the storm Sandy. That may have come about anyway, might it not, irrespective of fossil fuels being burnt by America and other nations?
We need to get past this idea that we're debating the science. 90%, 99% of the world's scientists agree that climate change is real, climate change is happening, and that it's man-made. There's no debate about that. We can discuss whether or not any individual storm event can be attributed to climate change. And it is difficult to say this storm was a result of climate change or this one is, but there's no question that the world's climate is changing and we're seeing the impacts from the droughts in the West in the United States, in California, to Superstorm Sandy and Hurricane Katrina. And it's impacting real people here in the United States and across the globe. There's no question that climate change is complicated, but I think the real problem is that the fossil fuel industry doesn't want us to believe in climate change. And we've seen with these documents that have been released from Exxon, that they've known about climate change for decades. And just like the tobacco industry was hiding the science about smoking, they've been hiding the science about climate change from the American people. And we're only now seeing just how insipid that has been and how calculated an effort it's been on their part.
And does the electorate in America not care about this, Jeffrey?
Well, some of them do and some of them don't. The people who are voting for the GOP wackos who deny science say, no, my team is right. There is a debate, and we're winning it because there is no evidence that climate change exists. And for every 100 scientists the other side produces that says, yes, it's real, we produce some clown who says, no, it's not real. In fact, so the debate exists. And unfortunately, it exists because the people who hold the purse strings to change deny science and deny climate change. I would like to ask Ben a question. Ben, take out your pad and pencil and number from 1 to 3. This is a test. Would you please tell me and everyone else the 3 irrefutable arguments that make it absolutely 100% understandably that it is certain and positive that climate change exists? What are those 3 arguments that cannot be refuted even by the Republicans in the House and Senate?
I mean, you can't refute that the world's atmosphere is the temperatures are rising. You can't refute the fact that the carbon intensity in the world's atmosphere is also rising and is now above 350 parts per million. The level at which we scientists believe it's going to be safe or would be safe, and the threshold for keeping temperatures below 1.5 degrees, which is the threshold that we need. And I don't know what the third that you're alluding to is.
I don't know. I'm asking you because.
Well, I mean, I think the third is we're seeing the real weather events here, the strange weather events, the wacky weather. The droughts in California, the wildfires, the Hurricane Katrinas. These are events that we haven't had with the frequency that we have before. I mean, I'm sitting here in Paris and it's incredibly warm right now. And yes, that happens every once in a while, but we're having outlier weather events frequently and all the time. And it's having a real impact on people, on crops, on our economy.
Okay, Jeffrey, let me try and understand here, get into the American psyche. We all know that fossil fuels have a finite, they are finite, okay? So at some point in the great American nation, someone's going to actually say, I'm going to put a different kind of fuel in my car or have a different kind of fuel. I'm going to have to power my factory by some other way. I'm going to have to generate electricity new ways. And, you know, that is now in the foreseeable future. And does that argument never gain any traction with policymakers?
Well, it gains traction on the two coasts, where you've got people who are willing to admit that, yes, climate change is real. In the middle of the country, especially in the Republican South, they won't admit it because the politicians whom they're sending to the House and the Senate, who have the purse strings, absolutely deny it. One of the things that happened, I mean, California is always ahead of everybody else. One of the things that happened several years ago, when they realized the pollution levels were getting so terrible in California, was they said, tell you what, if you buy a hybrid car so that you can save on fossil fuels, if you buy a hybrid car, we will let you park for free in Los Angeles. So today, if you have a hybrid or if you have an electric car, not just a Tesla, but any others, there are electric pumps all over Los Angeles where you can park and charge, or you can just simply park at a meter for free if you've got a hybrid. That's helping to move the indicator a little bit closer to where it should be. But, you know, it doesn't happen in the rest of the states. It happens in California because everything starts there. It may happen soon in New York. I hope it does. But it's the rest of the world. It's the rest of what we call the flyover states who are saying, no, I want my big gas guzzler car, even if you tell me I shouldn't have it. And I want to heat my home properly. And I don't really care because the Koch brothers are great guys and they're getting me the politicians I deserve.
Let me just ask Ben about, let's internationalise this a bit, in particular a focus on India, because the Indian delegation, I think, in Paris have said, look, you're just being unfair on us. Our economy needs to grow, it needs energy to grow, and coal is probably the best way we can generate energy. They kind of have a point, don't they, Ben?
So the Indian delegation definitely has a point. You know, the United States and the developed world caused this problem. We have brought the world to the precipice of this crisis, and we're saying, wait a minute, now we all need to lock arms and fight this problem together. And they're saying, wait a minute, you've gotten wealthy off this, you've gotten rich off this, and what are you saying that we need to make changes in our lifestyle and our society in order to deal with this problem that you've created? That said, they also shouldn't be and can't be developing with coal. What we need to have our countries, the United States and the developed world, giving them the renewable energy, the solar power, the wind, the technology so that they can develop on a better trajectory. And it's not like fossil fuels don't have costs associated with them aside from just the climate impacts. You know, these are fuels that cause asthma, that cause lung disease, that cause cancer. These are fuels that kill people. They kill the people that live near those plants and near those facilities, that live near the mines. And so we do have the opportunity for a better society, for a better development model. But the developed world actually has to help the developing world move forward on a different trajectory than the one that we did. And right now, we're refusing to do that. The amount of climate finance that we have to do, the amount of money that the United States is willing to pay to help India develop in a different way is terribly inadequate.
Ben Schreiber, good to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Now, a reminder, you can catch up with the Sky News debate on Apple TV, on Roku, and catch up, and of course, at skynews.com/US. Now, who would have thought that in 1970, the must-have new piece of technology was the video cassette recorder? 10 years later, in 1981, it was a compact disc player. And in 2001, it saw the introduction of the plasma TV. In the last 12 months, the driverless car has progressed at pretty good speed, and the computer watch has gone on sale. Well, Gary Shapiro is the president and CEO of the Consumer Electronics Association. He also wrote the best-selling book, The Comeback: how innovation will restore the American dream. And Jeffrey Robinson, of course, is still with us as well. Gary, let's go to you first. We're getting ready for your big show, haven't we? The CES show in January. What do you think are the big themes going to come up next year?
Well, yes, the CES will be in Las Vegas in January. It is the largest size we've ever had it. We're actually restricting attendance, so it's not too crowded, and hotel rates will not be too high. But the themes will be innovation, everything. There's no one big breakout product. The story really is that innovation is happening everywhere, with driverless cars, with robotics, with 3D printing, with virtual reality, with augmented reality, with home technology and controls, with so many different areas that are exploding. We're seeing it with drones, we're seeing it with 3D printing, and we're seeing it with wireless health technology. Many, many different areas. And the startup world is exploding. We'll have over 500 companies in what we call Eureka Park, with a waiting list, which is actually a curated area just for startups. So what we're seeing is a phenomenal wave of innovation in many, many different categories that are providing a world which is solving major problems in energy use, in healthcare, in food production, in education, and of course, there's lots of entertainment.
Just give me the sort of hit rate. Guide me on that. If you're a startup, yes, it's an exciting time to be around because you have your chance. You may just make it. But on the other hand, there's probably dozens, if not hundreds of people doing something similar. So how many really do break through and be a success?
A shockingly large number, actually. There's a tremendous amount of investment money available in the technology world because as recently as the Climate Change Summit, we're talking about technology and innovation as being the solutions to the world's problems. We're talking about the biggest problems in the world. It's just not energy use. It's just hunger. It's food production. It's clean water. It's clean air. It's disease. It's education. It's so many different things. And what we are in this phenomenal time period in history, which has never occurred before, where anyone who can basically spend the money on some simple device like a smartphone or a computer or a tablet and have wireless or broadband access, they can come up with something which will solve problems. So the barriers to entry are low and the tools are there. And the tools, frankly, are these micro electromechanical systems, these MEMS, which are simply devices, sensors, which are in every smartphone. They measure where you are. They're gyroscopes and accelerometers and pressure and temperature. They measure many different things, and they cost a few pennies a piece. And very clever people are putting them together in really unique ways, and they're solving problems. And that's what the Internet of Things really is. You take these tiny, tiny little devices, and you hook them up with each other, and all of a sudden you have solutions to many problems. They have to do with security and safety. We're going to, in the next decade or two, we're going to cut down dramatically on the world's car accidents and traffic and use of fuel. Why? Because of these devices and the wireless internet and smart innovators around the world. And a lot of them will make it big. Already we're seeing what we call these unicorns that are out there. These are billion-dollar valuation companies that were just startups or didn't exist just 5 years ago. And I think on the list of 100 unicorns, about 15 or 20 of them just didn't even exist as companies 5 years ago. So there's still opportunities for new companies to really break out and create zillionaires. Not that that's the goal, but the goal is really to allow innovation to solve problems and for bright people to come up and show their creative juice and show what they can do and let the marketplace determine which wins.
Jeffrey, when you hear Gary talk like that, it's an exciting time to be a technologist. It's an exciting time to be an innovator, isn't it?
Absolutely. There has never been, and Gary Shapiro is absolutely right, there's never been a more exciting time on this planet. Back in the 70s, there was a book, as I remember, I think it was called The Greening of America, that spoke about the fact that there were more scientists alive on the planet at that time than there had been cumulatively throughout history. And I'm sure that's true today. I'm sure there are more scientists and technologists alive today than there have ever been added up from the beginning of mankind. One of the things that has always absolutely fascinated me is all of the toys we use today, the smartphones and the laptops and all of the various toys we use today. By the year 2025, we will have new toys that will replace our old toys. And of the 2025 toys that we will depend on, something like 90 or 95% of them have not yet been invented. This is an extremely exciting time. where we are connecting with people around the world, just as we're doing now, for free, I might add, on Skype, being able to see and do and research and talk to and solve all sorts of problems. I did a little bit of research here, and in 2010, the U.S. Patent Office had 490,000 applications for patents, and that year is significant because the television program Shark Tank started in 2009. So 1 year into Shark Tank, there were 490,000 applications. 5 years after the beginning of Shark Tank, which is a fabulously popular program, it has increased to 615,000, which is an increase of 25%. And I looked at all of the years previously. We have never in the 5-year period had as much an increase in patent applications. Now, I suspect there is a cause and result. Maybe Gary can talk to that. The fact that innovation comes to us so easily. It's just there, and all you have to do is figure out the better mousetrap, and all of the ways of making it work are easily obtainable.
Well, let me just throw that to Gary, and also the thought that it doesn't really know, innovation that is, no borders, does it? If you've got the right idea and those modest resources you alluded to, anyone can have this idea. You don't have to be at a posh American university.
Absolutely, that is the case. Innovation knows no borders, but there are things that governments can do to help or to hurt innovation. I've written 2 books about innovation in several hundred columns. You talk about patent applications, which is the measure we sometimes use to describe innovation. It's a really lousy measure, honestly. For example, in China, China's had a huge surge in the number of patent applications. Why? Because of their 5-year plan, they have a goal of a certain number of patents per 100,000 people. So they're putting in a lot of weak and variations on a theme patents. And we even see a little bit of that in the United States. But still, that is a good measure. But what you also need is you need companies that are willing to invest. I think the U.S. is blessed with investors, and they often congregate in areas. And oftentimes there's also, you have to be willing to fail. And that there's a culture in the United States and in Israel of that failure is education. It's not a bad thing. There's also a culture among our school children of asking why, and rather than learning by rote. And that's important. There's also tremendous diversity in the U.S. And that, I think, is beneficial to invention, especially at larger companies. But yes, anyone with an idea can and does often do really great things. And it doesn't require a huge capital investment, especially if you're talking about the next cool app or the next Facebook or something like that. It's really a software solution which just requires an idea and some really good app writers and execution on it. And then you'll attract investment.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, let me ask Gary. Let's say tomorrow morning I wake up with an idea for a better mousetrap. What do I do?
Well, it depends what it is. I am a big believer in not writing a lengthy business plan, that you go out and you expose it to potential customers and get their input. That's what we've designed our entire trade show around. That's what Eureka Park is with the 500 startups. Is for like almost nothing, we subsidize it. You basically go there and you get a lot of feedback very quickly. But you don't have to do that at a trade show. You could go visit customers. You could do it with the public. You could do it with friends. But just start. And sometimes you have to move very quickly. And that's another thing that governments sometimes affect. They make it difficult to start a business. You have a license. You have to get broadband lines. There's rules on hiring. And once you hire, you can't fire. That's inconsistent with innovation. So having a flexible workforce, having a government that makes a difference. But going out there, and of course, if it requires money, you have to be able to sell your idea. I've judged a lot of events. I deal with a lot of investors in big companies and small. And one of the challenges is you might have a great idea and you have a person who can't speak or execute or can't lead or manage. And you need to complement know who you are, know what your weaknesses are, and get some people around you who complement those weaknesses with their strengths and put a team together that could really make a difference. And that requires not hiring people like
Gary,
you.
can I just ask you about the whole idea, though, of trade shows? I mean, as you say, the CES is one of the biggest I think America does. But isn't it a bit of a quaint anachronism that we still, in 2016, fly people from all over the world to one set of hotels in Las Vegas where they bump into one another? Or is there something about that that's still very important, even in the days of Kickstarter and the web and instant video?
You know, my full-time paid job is to be a cheerleader for the technology industry. And in theory, technology will say we don't need any of this. We could just have video conference calls and we could do that. But the reality is we're human beings still. And that human experience of looking someone in the eye, figuring out whether you trust them, using your five senses to see how companies position themselves is very valuable, and we all need it as human beings to be in touch face to face with each other. I love all this technology stuff, but you know what? I wanna be with people. That's who I am, and I enjoy the human touch, the contact, the hug, the handshake, and that matters. And there's the value of serendipity. How do you have serendipity in a online world is a serious question even today. And with a trade show, you could go from one exhibit to another and see how the company wants to position themselves. You could see the people there. You could see the products. You could compare them immediately. And from a green perspective, it actually makes a lot of sense because the average person going to a trade show has like 12 to 20 meetings. They save several 100,000 miles of trips around the world. The CEO of Intel, Brian Krzanich, thanked me on the fourth day of the CES. I said, why are you thanking me? You're here on the fourth day. He said, oh my God, this is amazing. He says, I do more in these 4 days and see more people than I can possibly do in the first few months of the year. And he said, thank you for having this event. Let me know how I could help you. And that's not uncommon because it is very efficient. And we've designed this event not only for exhibits, but also so the leaders in innovation around the world can get together in one place from many different industries. It's the automobile, entertainment industry, advertising industry, content creation, broadcasting, satellite, and others all in one location, and business is done. And what's really changed radically in just the last few years even is the value of going across industries to cut deals which make a difference. You have to be able to team up and go out of your vertical space and meet with other people and do something. And that's where a lot of innovation is coming, is people in different disciplines getting together. And I think that's what universities are starting to figure out and work on. The value of an MBA now is teamwork more than anything else, and knowing your skills and knowing who else you need and putting it together and working together as a team, which is really valued now at the CEO level around the world.
How do you protect yourself if you're a young innovator?
Jeffrey, I'm sorry, we got to wrap it here. So let me just say thank you, just a second. And Gary Shapiro, thank you so much for being with us today. And Jeffrey, thank you for joining us from New York.
Thank you.
And that's it for this edition of The Debate. You can continue watching Sky News on Apple TV, on Roku, and Catch Up. And of course, on skynews.com. Until next time, goodbye.